I remember in 1960 or 61, after we'd moved to West Main Street, my uncle Nathaniel and his wife Jeanette were in the evangelical mode. And my uncle Carl, both Nathaniel and Carl were my mother's little brothers. They belonged to the Pentecostal church in Searsport, and they were in their, like I said, evangelical mode. They were doing a drive to increase the membership. I think the pastor was more looking to increase his wallet size, but they came to our house and they recruited my parents in a way that they sent Rhonda and I think Ray, I'm not sure, but at least Rhonda and I packed us up, put us in the car, sent us with Uncle Carl down to the Pentecostal church. And we were rounded up and put in like a primary, which was down in the basement, which was kind of freakish to me because there were no windows. And they began what seemed like an indoctrination. I didn't like it. I was very uncomfortable. And they were asking me questions that I couldn't answer and seemed to be picking on me. And it pissed me off to the point where I just ran away. I went from the Pentecostal church. I think I was maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. And I walked all the way through town up to West Main Street, beyond the Savage Road, the next place called the Ancestor House. I went home, basically, and I told Mom and Dad I was never going back there. And it turns out my sister, Rhonda, had a similar experience. It was painful. The next experience we had with religion, my parents became members of the Methodist Church in Searsport, the brick building on Main Street, across from the museum. That was a little more pleasant. We had a primary teacher. Her name was Grace Jordan. She was a really nice lady. Played the piano, was the organist for the adults. And I can remember Douglas Dickey being in my grade. And he played the lame, or the Samaritan, I guess, or not the Samaritan, but the guy that was waylaid, and I got to be the Samaritan because I was big and strong enough to pick him up. Doug was probably the smallest kid in class. But those were some pretty good times, and I stayed going to the Methodist Church in Searsport until there was no longer any place for me. The youth fellowship program basically stopped at a certain age, teenage, and that was the end of it. But I did have a small foundation on Jesus Christ and, being the Son of God and Oh Holy Night, Silent Night, that kind of thing. So it was fundamental. And I will say this one other thing, that when the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar came out, it was an anchor to me. The album, the 2-album set, was actually an anchor to me. It gave me more of a foundation to go on. Yeah, blah, 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 rock and roll, all that crap. But no, the lyrics were fairly profound, and some of the things in it were scripturally based. Most of it was scripturally based, even though they did take some creative licenses. I remember being in a program called, it was run by CETA. It was a Comprehensive Employment Training Act for teenagers. And it was around, 77. And they took us out to Lakewood Theater to actually see a live performance of Jesus Christ Superstar. And it was interesting because at that time, the people who were running the special projects for youth were social workers. Some could have qualified as therapists, I guess, but some of them were fresh out of college. And the discussion on the ride back between two of them was the kiss between Judas and Jesus Christ, and they were discussing whether or not it was a homosexual kiss or not. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what is this? You guys are fucking idiots. Anyway, that was kind of my first understanding that homosexuality was a much bigger situation in the world than I had realized. I had thought that it was only, a couple of people here and there. And Searsport did have a couple of gay people. I didn't really think too much of it, but then again, I wasn't really interested in homosexuality. I was, barely aware of my own sexuality. Yeah, but that wasn't how this whole thing started. It was being thrust into a world of religion without any format or foundation. My parents weren't religious at that point in time. When Uncle Carl and Uncle Nathaniel were, holy rolling. But my mom and dad did become Methodists and were faithful followers of the Methodist beliefs well into the 1980s.